Thanks a lot, Matt. I'm actually just not going to introduce Adam because I feel like you did a good enough job, Matt. And I also feel like he doesn't really warrant an introduction. So I'm just going to get right into it, if that's all right, Adam. And I'm going to start by asking you, what were the things or the people in your early life that really influenced you to become the person you are today?
Obviously, the most important ones are my parents, sister. My parents started climbing when they were really young. They met during climbing when they were like 18, and they've been together since then, all their life climbing. So it was just natural that they brought me to the cracks since I was a little boy. And I think it was really important that at very early age there was absolutely no pressure, not maybe even like asking me, do you want to give it a try or something. It was like more me, this looks good, I want, because I was just surrounded by all the people that climbed. And eventually I think it was like I didn't want to be the only one around not climbing. So I just somehow convinced them to tie me up on the rope and start climbing. So I don't really remember that. I was around 3, 4. I think I remember quite well when I was like 5 and already climbing. And since I was 6, I'm climbing at least 4 times a week or something like that. But then there were like some close friends of my parents. So for example, Tomáš Pilka, he is a total legend, and he is the guy that started climbing with my dad when my dad was 16 and he was 12, with absolutely no knowledge and no gear. It was still the communist times back in the Czechoslovakia, so no imported gear from the West, or if it was super complicated and like illegal. They went climbing out in the high Tatras, like their parents wouldn't even know. When my granddad found out that my dad would go out climbing, he would say like, no, we are not going to climb, and then they wouldn't speak for 2 months because
Wow.
my dad would say like, no, I will climb. So Tomáš Pilka, he is like the first ascensionist of so many hard routes in our home crack, close to my hometown of Brno. And we would meet quite regularly, and seeing up climbing with like such an elegance and technique was always really inspiring. And for me, for example, his masterpiece is a route called Wizard's Apprentice, which is now 8C. It's basically vertical / slabby. The hardest move is on a fingernail crimp, and that was like my dream. Oh, I want to be once in a lifetime so good that I would like to climb this route.
Nice.
And
Cool.
then it was like mostly some books, maybe like Heinz Zack book called Rock Stars, that influenced me a lot, and quite a lot of stars that you can read about there, like Wolfgang Gülich and these people.
Mm-hmm. So what was the thing that kind of really drove you to be as good as you are? Like, did you have any sense of kind of like that you were motivated to make it your career and to really take it to the level you have, or did it feel really more intuitive?
I think it was kind of both. I mean, at a certain point, I think I was 7, everything that sort of like clicked. I went for the first competition. I somehow realized, I'm probably quite talented.
Mm-hmm.
And right at that time I was able to like read. I was going to the first or second class, so I was getting some magazines and this book called Rock Stars, and I was flicking through the pages and reading a bit, and I thought like, well, this looks like the most cool thing ever. I want to be a professional climber. Because like
Nice.
somehow to a naive eyes of a 7-year-old boy, all these pictures were like super cool. Even like the old school pictures, the pink lycras and shirtless, like on the top of El Cap, that looked just so cool.
Nice.
So basically, when I was 7, I thought like, I want to be a professional climber and travel around the world and climb on the rock. So basically now I can say that I'm living my dream to the fullest.
Nice. That's cool.
And somehow I never really doubted that it wouldn't happen.
Right. Wow.
But at the same time, it was never like really a sacrifice. because
Mm-hmm.
nevertheless it was like what I knew and what I thought like was so cool, and I enjoyed the process so much. Except for maybe, you know, as almost every motivated kid, I was really furious when I failed on a climb.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it kind of stuck with me until now. Maybe it's not as bad as it used to be, but when I was a kid, it was bad. And I admire my parents that they were, let's say, okay with that.
Okay, we might come back to that later. But I want to know a little bit more about your childhood. You know, it sounds like you had all this passion from a young age, and it sounds really positive. And now you're a father. Do you ever look back on your childhood and go like, oh wow, like climbing was this really huge, serious thing, although it was really positive and fun, it was also very serious. Do you ever look back and go, huh, like my childhood probably wasn't that normal? And like, do you reflect on that differently at all now that you're a father?
So I think my childhood was great, and I wouldn't change a thing. Because
Mm-hmm.
and I think my childhood, thanks to climbing, was pretty easy, and I didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
lost. If I didn't have a climbing, maybe I would feel that I don't really fit. I was
Mm-hmm.
felt kind of weird, you know, among my classmates, especially like, you know, between 5 to 12. I didn't really know what to talk about with them. They didn't know climbing, and all I knew was climbing. So, while at the same time, I think that times are changing a bit and climbing is changing. So, you know, if I was born now, probably my childhood would be a little different, but because maybe most probably there will be more focus on the competition and like more
Mm-hmm.
structured training, and I'm thankful for my parents and for the way that I chose for my climbing, and thanks to that, being able to explore like all disciplines of climbing that climbing has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think I'm really glad that I also come from my country, where like before the communism fell, all the stories of my parents and their friends, and hearing like how crazy it was to go abroad, and what kind of crazy tricks they had to make to make it through the customs with like enough money to be able to buy gear in Germany and stuff, that like all that sounded like really exciting to me, and made me really motivated, not only go sport climbing and for the competitions, but maybe, yeah, more motivated even to go to the mountains, even though
Nice.
I don't really feel like I am an alpinist or whatever. But yeah, I've always been attracted by the full spectrum of climbing.
Yeah. Yeah, you really kind of like feel like you've mastered all the areas of rock climbing at least. And I'll pick up on that in a moment, but I want to ask you about expectations, because I imagine when you were younger, you know, you were like this wonder kid, right? You were like doing these crazy grades for someone so young. And I imagine that you like outshone everyone's expectations. But now, of course, like everyone knows you to be Adam Ondra, like you're the best. And how have you kind of managed like external expectations that have changed over the course of your
Mhm.
career?
So when I was later and more adult, I think I was pretty already resistant, even though even now it's definitely not easy. If the things are going easy, well, then it's kind of easy to master the pressure. But I think the pressure was like becoming, yeah, like sort of gradually increasing and increasing. And to be honest, for example, when I went for the first World Cups when I was 16, I didn't really feel that much pressure, because I thought like, I might be quite good on the rocks, but you know, competitions are more physical. And yeah, I went for my first competitions. I didn't really expect to be able to win. I was hoping, man, it would be really cool if I made it to the finals. And all of a sudden, well, on my first World Cup season, I won it overall. And
Mhm.
but the fact that it was like zero, I wouldn't say zero pressure, but relatively low pressure, made it relatively easy to be able to perform. But in a few years already, I had high expectations, and on some comps, I was struggling a lot to be able to perform.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
but I think it could have gone worse maybe at certain. I've been always really lucky in my career because my level was like gradually getting better and better and better and better. So I didn't really have any like a situation when, you know, in 2 years I wouldn't never really progress. And especially when I was 14, 15, that would be really hard for me.
Mm.
I think
What do you think
the really
since
good thing, which is surprising, is that when I was like really young, maybe 10, 11, 12, I was only focusing on the onsiding. And I never like really worked on a single project for a long time. So maybe I could have done harder routes at a younger age, but that was actually good because at certain point, if like a very young kids finds a route that fits the style really well, then climbs a certain grade or like a really young age, but then might not really progress for a few more years. And that I think is really frustrating.
yeah.
Or at
Since
least for me, because no matter how much I like the climbing and the fuss about it, I'm definitely like number oriented person as well, an achievement oriented person, and I have no problem to admit it. And I think grades are a great part of climbing and even a great part of discussions up to a certain point, if you're not like too much obsessed about it.
Yeah, that's interesting because I probably think I'm the opposite. I think mostly because grades don't maybe make as much sense to me as they do to you,
Yeah.
like being a shorter climber that maybe is not like fitting into the average profile. So I don't feel like my progression tracks very well to the grades a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're responsible for grading a lot of routes. And it's like how's that process been for you? Have you found it fun? Have you found it stressful? Yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Both fun, both stressful, and I definitely feel responsibility, but I'm doing all my best to be able to tell. Because at the same time, yes, that's maybe one of the biggest pressures that I feel from the climbing community, because my grading opinion is like taken for granted, like that's the truth, which is sometimes funny, especially if it's my first attempt. And it often happens that, you know, it's a route that I didn't bolt, that I come for a visit certain crag, you know, it's not really clean, I go up, clean something, do it second go, and I say certain grade, and then it gets more clean to different beta, and the grade might be completely different, but you know, the grade might stick because people don't want to downgrade my routes.
Yeah.
And I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah, that's a great place to be in. So you were saying before that you felt like you were very outcome oriented, and obviously like being directed by outcomes is really useful, right? Like setting big goals is really useful. How do you balance that with like focusing on the process? Because the process is where you actually have to put in the hard work to train. It's where you have to like break down a climb and work everything out. And you have to enjoy that process, or otherwise it's just like not fun at all and it's really distracting. So how do you kind of like balance being process oriented with being like really outcome orientated?
To me, surprisingly, it's not so difficult. So I definitely like sending hard route, but not only just the gratification of like achieving it, but I also like the mindset of being out there completely focused and doing my absolute best while climbing. Not really focusing on like feeling physically the best, but really out there climbing like so great.
That's
And that's why I
interesting.
try to apply even to my training.
Mm,
I'm always in the training, I'm always trying to climb my best in terms of technique. Not only like the training session is not just now I want to get strong and I want to get
yeah.
strong because I want to send that route. I think I enjoy every single training session, every single climbing session, because all of it is basically climbing.
Yeah.
And I love climbing. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, to go out into the gym is not sacrifice really to be able to send that route. I like that process, and I don't have to like you know, convince myself that I enjoy it. I just enjoy
Mm-hmm.
it. For
Yeah.
sure. Sometimes I feel I might have to sacrifice if I want to send this route. Maybe I need to train a few more weeks because otherwise I won't be like fit enough. But it's still relatively easy. The more difficult for me mentally is to, really decide if I'm training for the Olympics, then I might have to sacrifice the rock climbing, and this might not always be the most fun. I will still enjoy training for the Olympics, but I know that there is world out there on the rock, which at that point might feel like even more enjoyable than staying in the gym.
Yeah, I can't imagine. What's been, out of all of the big projects you've done, what's been kind of the hardest process from a mental perspective? Which of those routes, or which of those big sends?
So definitely it wasn't silence, even though it is the route where I spent the most time and which took me the most effort. But there, the mental process was kind of easy because I was kind of gradually just making progression until I sent it. So even though it took me six trips, I think every single trip I made a progression. I think the hardest was maybe La Duradura, because it took me just way longer than I expected.
Yeah.
I did it on trip 5, and I thought I would have done it for sure on trip 3.
Yeah, it's always hardest when your expectations don't match what happens, right?
That's quite interesting, because I know a few people that always tell me, like, the most gratifying moment is when you're working on a route and you reach a certain state when you know you are going to send it. And I'm always like, how can you know? So many times I was sure, like, tomorrow I will send, or if not, I will send the day after tomorrow. And then maybe it took me 3 more weeks.
Yeah, you never know. You're just lying to yourself if you think you know. Okay, so what in your opinion makes a good climber?
Difficult. I think the most important is actually that might be exciting is the psyche for climbing.
Okay, cool. And that causes them to be a good climber, or that's what makes them a good climber?
No, you don't have to be very psyched to be an excellent climber. But I think if you are psyched, even if you are not maybe the most talented, you will end up being a good climber.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Because I think you need that psych to be able to learn, because climbing is an incredibly complex activity. And you need to want to learn new things and new techniques and not stick to the old stuff.
Yeah. It's also like a challenging sport mentally and physically. So you have to have that psyche to go back time and time again, to train, to go back to the same climb over and over again.
Not necessarily if you enjoy more on-sighting.
True. Yeah. Yeah. But even then it's still challenging. So
yeah.
The psyche is important. I agree with you there. What do you think about the concept of mastery in climbing? Do you know this concept?
I don't know, but I hope I can imagine. And I think you don't have to master climbing, and you can still be one of the best climbers. Climbing performance is composed of so many different factors. And sometimes you can be just really, really, really strong, and you can still be absolute best because your brute power will be just so incredible. On the other hand, I think it's much more fun to be able to master the climbing, because
from a technical perspective.
From a technical perspective,
yeah,
exactly. To be able to really, I wouldn't say enjoy, because maybe the quote climbing is fun is not necessarily what it is for me. It's more like deeper appreciation or something.
Yeah.
And it's different when you're out there climbing an easier route on your limit, and you know, feeling the freedom and feeling the wind, and to really climb on your limit when you don't really think in words and sentences. But I think I wouldn't call it fun, but deeper appreciation. And I think for me, this is really valuable. Every route where I can really dig that deep into this mindset is I really have a deep memory of it. And it feels like my life is, I don't know, wider or something. And if I think I can't do it in any other activity in life, because I don't know any other activity better, or I don't feel that I master any other activity as well as I climb.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's like a much richer experience than just enjoying something. Like you can enjoy a movie, but it's not the same as climbing a route at your limit.
If I was able to like cut loose in every single move on the route, that for sure I would never like enjoy it as much as I do.
Okay.
And that's why routes where it's actually the only way how to do it, to cut loose in every move, I don't enjoy.
Really? What's wrong with cutting loose?
No.
What comes to mind is flow state. I don't know if you think much about this, but like, you know, those moments where you're totally absorbed in what you're doing, like super focused, everything like flows, it feels like automatic, you're like creative in ways that are surprising to you. And that state of mind that I think you were kind of starting to explain a bit there, like how often can you access it, and how important is it for you to access that for the harder things that you do?
I think 100% flow state I only reach maybe once or twice a year. But I think almost always I'm in like 80 or 90% of the flow state.
Even on your warm-ups?
Yeah.
Nice. You're not just warming up thinking about something else ever?
I think this is a great tip for any climber, to like be really present even on your warm-up, and to climb your best even on your warm-up, because that's how you maximize the time when you're actually like improving as a climber.
And it feels better than to be distracted.
Yeah.
It sounds like you
mean that like you take it to at the same time, it doesn't mean you take it too seriously, you know.
Yeah.
You know, regular day climbing at the crag would be, you know, just chatting to whoever I'm climbing with, and you know, being completely relaxed. And definitely before warming up, I wouldn't like observe the route for hours or anything like that. But when I actually start climbing, I even chit chat a little bit with my climbing partner, but I'm still like focused. And then also when now it's a project time, a few minutes before I start climbing, I really focus and then give it everything.
Yeah. And what do you do to get focused before something really important?
I feel if I try really, really hard to get into the flow state, and I think I've even read a few books about it, it's actually going worse. I feel like what works the best for me, that if I feel that this is the moment, I feel like you have to catch the moment, and sometimes it just comes naturally, and you feel like now it's the time to go climbing, and you start and it feels great. If I don't feel that the moment is there, I often visualize a moment in the recent past when I felt it. When I felt I was climbing great. And also maybe visualizing a moment when I also felt great, like physically, to also convince my mind that not only my mind is in the perfect shape, but also my body is in the perfect shape. Because I definitely feel that the physical and the mental part are deeply connected.
Totally, yeah.
I feel like
I mean, the
super flow is never really there if I feel out of shape.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I've had pretty intense flow states before when I've been really injured, but it's been really weird because it's felt like like a 7A plus has felt like an 8A plus on site for me. So
Yeah.
it has been possible for me, but yeah, it definitely feels more accessible when I'm in physical shape for sure.
Maybe I'm just more critical. I'm just too much critical. You know, the feeling when you're out of shape and you're holding like a hold, which you know it's a good hold, but it doesn't feel it's a good hold, is just frustrating to me.
Yeah. You mentioned early on like that you can get angry when you fail, and then you just mentioned just then that maybe you're too critical. You know, overall you just seem so positive, so passionate. What's the other side of that? And sometimes we see a glimpse of it in your movies, right? When you fall off and there's a lot of fury. What place does that take up in your climbing?
So I think in the videos you mostly see that, but in the videos you don't really see that in 5 minutes. I'm usually completely fine.
I think we do see that actually, or maybe I've seen that in
Yeah.
real life, but I feel I think people get a sense of that. But
Mhm.
yeah, tell us more about it.
I feel like, yes, because climbing is really important, and that certain route that I have just fallen off is like really important to me. And I feel like it's just easier to, you know, explode and to get away with that, and that helps me in 2 minutes to feel okay. I know it looks bizarre. I think I'm already controlling myself so much better, and I'm definitely embarrassed how I was behaving as a kid. Yet on the other hand, when I'm watching the other young kids climbing, I see that the kids that are getting angry after falling off, you feel like, that guy, that kid, there is something in him or her. You know, they really care about climbing.
Yeah, okay.
That kid is probably gonna climb for a long time.
Yeah. I don't know about that though. I've seen both sides because sometimes the fury, people take it home with them. You know, it sounds like you're not, but sometimes people, that negativity, they go home with it and they spend a week like that. And I
Yeah.
think this is difficult to manage. Does that ever happen to you where you can get in like a negative place with your climbing for longer than just a few moments?
Sometimes, yes. Yeah. And it's not easy to find distraction, but I feel like it's only coming to when it's something really important. For sure, like the strongest it was after the Olympics. That was like the biggest disappointment of my climbing career, for sure. And in that case, it lasted days or maybe even weeks.
Okay. What was so
But basically
disappointing?
because I never really sacrificed as much as I did for the Olympics. Yeah.
Right, okay. And were you not happy with the results?
I was not happy with the results. I mean, by the sixth place. By
Okay.
by what I performed that day, I was pretty happy with.
Okay. So that's an
And
interesting.
it was the mixed feelings, you know.
Mm,
From one point of view, I could have been happy, but obviously it would be great to have that medal.
right, okay, yeah. So that's like a clear kind of distinction, right, between like the external outcome goal versus the like what you can control, which is how you perform on that day.
Yeah, yeah.
um how do you balance those two things, right? Because if you did your best, you did your best. Yeah, like just take us through some of the thinking there.
Because now I think there is a really fine balance between getting too frustrated and not getting enough frustrated. I think getting frustrated in the right amount makes you like come back better prepared and stronger.
Okay, so
But I
did you
think I
feel
know
like you
a
were
person
frustrated in the right
that
amount?
I think I know a few friends, like incredibly strong climber, like Martin Strani. We used to train together as a kid. As a kid, he's like 3 years older than me, and I think he was always so talented, and like he was always almost one of the best, but not like quite enough. And because of that, he never really made it to the professional career, and now he's working full time, still being. But I always feel that he never really got frustrated enough. to be able to come, okay, next time I'll prepare myself, I will maybe sacrifice more and I'm gonna climb that, or I will win the next competitions.
So yeah, I guess it's like how to turn that frustration, which might feel quite uncomfortable, into like a positive driving force. Is that something you feel like you're particularly good at?
I think so. And in setting realistic yet ambitious goals.
Okay.
I
How do
think
you
a
go
decent
about
amount
setting
of
those?
success and the right amount of failure is really important.
Right, yeah, okay. So what have your failures been, and how have they taught you in ways that have helped you succeed later?
I think it's just constant. You know, many times there were many routes. I think the first that comes to my mind is Laduradura.
Okay.
Quite a few times, you know, underestimating the real difficulty of the climb. Every time getting back, thinking that I'm stronger than ever, and then again having to admit that I wasn't strong enough to send it.
Yeah.
But trip number 5, I was finally confident that, you know, this time I'm not lying myself. This time, yes, I'm strong enough, and it turned out to be true.
Have you ever not finished a climb? Like, do you have any open projects around the place?
Yeah, like recently last winter, I was working on a climb called Excalibur. It's a project in Arco that I really wanted to do, but due to many reasons, and one is also that there is a pocket that I can't really fit my finger properly with the ring finger. And if I take it with the index finger and I have to crimp, it's just injuring my finger. So I'm okay to give up on that climb.
Yeah.
I've already also accepted that I will always be pretty bad in pocket climbing.
Right, just biological reasons, or?
Maybe I've been climbing just way too many times on a full crimp or a half crimp position, and that's why I never really trained on the open hand grip. And now I feel it's like too late to get better at it. And every time I feel like I want to get better at it, I feel a bit my tendons.
Right, okay. What do you think, other than maybe pockets, you still have left to work on mentally and physically as a climber?
I would say everything else. I'm definitely. I just got back from Sheffield, where I visited the White Boys. So I was trying some of the crack climbing that I haven't tried before. And that made me really psyched, for example, to climb more like off-width cracks and something that, yeah, I haven't tried yet properly.
Because you're like a super diverse climber, right? Like you seem to do everything. What motivated you to like go to Indian Creek and climb cracks, or like do the Dawn Wall, or like so many climbers who are like into the sport bouldering competition world already feel like they're doing everything by even just climbing outdoors and indoors, right? Like what's motivated you to do everything in that way?
I don't know. Like looking at the pictures of Indian Creek or El Capitan looks like, how can you say you are not attracted by seeing that if you are a climber?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. But I guess you know, many people would say that you run the risk of not being your best in one area. Like maybe you could climb 9C plus 9D or something 5 years ago if you had just focused on sport climbing. So in some ways you've sacrificed something, right?
For sure. And that's why I'm not going for the expeditions yet.
Okay.
But I think going to the Indian Creek for a short amount of time will not have an influence on your sport climbing level. Right. Well, at the same time, you know, certain things just attract me so much that I think even for like the mental health.
Yeah.
You know, because I always want to be 100% psyched for climbing. And being multidisciplinary helps me to always keep 100% psyched.
Yeah, no.
And I think thanks to the 100% psych, then it helps me to be even better on the competitions.
Mm-hmm. I also think you learn stuff too, right? Like I'm often hand jamming on tufa climbs and things, and
yeah, and for sure, like hand jamming then turned to be quite useful even on some of the World Cups.
Totally, yeah. They've got everything in the comps these days.
Yeah.
A slightly tricky question now, turning a bit more to like what you think about like the climbing community and culture as a whole. How have you approached like managing your weight and nutrition as a climber? You know, we're starting to talk a bit more about the phenomena of under eating in climbing, and it'd be interesting to get your take on all that and how you approach it.
It's a problem for sure. It's maybe not as, it seems it's not big as much of a problem as 20, 30 years ago, because of the styles of the routes are different, especially on the competitions. Like, it seems like it's not that good to be that skinny because you need this explosive power. Yet still for certain kind of climbers, it is still working really well. And even I am definitely fluctuating with my weight. I definitely always look at the others and thinking, oh my God, I'm 10 or 15 kilos heavier than everybody else around me on this comp. While at the same time, yes, I know that I'm on the very fringe of a healthy fat level. And I know that reducing the weight would only mean that I'm reducing the muscle mass. So I've already accepted that for sure. I have to be okay with like being heavier, but I have to find my way around it and adapt my climbing style to it.
Right. Yeah. So have you at any point had to make the conscious decision of choosing your health above your climbing performance, or for you is health synonymous with the top climbing performance?
I think I'm very sensitive with my body, and I know I can go down. I think my weight only fluctuates by 4 kilos a year in off season and the performance season, and I feel like keeping for 1 month, you know, the lowest weight for a specific goal, it works pretty well. But then my body says, like, naturally, this just doesn't feel right, and all of a sudden I don't even feel like my performance is going well. And then I go up just naturally by 2 kilos pretty quickly up, and everything feels all right.
Yeah, that's
I might be lucky in that perspective, that, you know, the good health correlates to the good performance.
Yeah.
Maybe there are many different people that they are getting like pretty bad in their health and under eating while still maintaining really high performance.
Yeah.
I definitely don't feel like that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, is there anything you think we should do as a climbing community or culture to kind of create better habits around this stuff?
It's very difficult because, of course, there are some opinions that there should be BMI criteria and stuff like this, but I don't really think that BMI criteria is a good measure. You can be under BMI criteria, under 17, and possibly still be healthy, but you can be BMI 20 and being under eating yourself. So it's really difficult. And on the top of that, if now climbing is an Olympic sport, there is even more pressure to better performance and stuff like this. I think in the comp climbing, you know, the best answer to it is the climbing style.
Yeah.
Which is happening, but still maybe in lead climbing, it can be still very advantageous to be very skinny.
Yeah, maybe especially with the women too. I don't know.
Yeah.
What would you change about the climbing world? This is now just could be anything. Like, what do you think is holding us back, like as a community culturally?
I don't know. Like in general, I'm pretty happy in the situation where climbing is nowadays.
Yeah. Where do you think climbing's going?
I think maybe some years ago I would be afraid that climbing would get Olympic and cracks would get overcrowded and like lots of new people that are behaving badly in the cracks. Maybe some places, yes, but I think in general it's not really happening. And climbing still, like, you know, I think it's really important that there will be more pressure because of climbing being Olympic and being like a super accessible sport, for safe sport, because of all the climbing gyms, that if you go outdoors, there should always be the safe places, very well protected, but there should also be the adventure. And I think the world is big enough to, you know, have to offer all kind of climbing varieties that there are.
Yeah,
in
nice.
some countries it's not problem because there's so much climbing. In my country that may be a little bit different because we have a very limited amount of rock, and to decide, okay, this now it's maybe completely the opposite, because all the cracks in my country are mostly like super run out and really sandbagged. And that's maybe the reason why like number of people climbing outdoors is not increasing at all. I think it's the same for the last 20 years. But it's mostly that the cracks are really bad for beginners.
What would you choose to do? Would you choose to make it better for beginners so that they would have an easier time and climbing would be more accessible, or would you choose to save the experience?
The problem is that we don't have any new cracks where you could bolt like very well bolted route from the beginning. You would have to rebolt and add bolts into existing climbs, and for me that's a hard decision.
Yeah,
Especially
it's really
as some of the first ascensionists might not be even alive right now. So
anyway, I don't want to go into a no bolting debate. We don't not have enough time for that. I just have a few more questions and then we'll see what the audience has to say. Tell me what your biggest strength is and your biggest weakness.
Drop knees, I think, are my biggest strength. Being able to find a no hand rest.
Okay.
Not only knee bars. But I think
what about like non-climbing strength and weakness? Like for you as a person?
It's very difficult. I think it's really difficult to define me as a person, especially from my own perspective.
I would say it's your
I'm
passion
just
for climbing.
For me as a person and personality, I'm just happy the way I am. And
maybe that's your strength. Really that's your strength. Nice.
Weakness, I wish I was a bit more empathic, or like be able to like feel what the others are feeling.
Okay, is this what your partner tells you?
I learned that if I like try to visualize myself how the others are feeling, if I was them, it's not working.
Okay, you know, there's another famous climber who I feel is the same. Can you guess who it is?
I don't know, Alex
Honnold. Okay, so I'm gonna see what the audience has to say. Someone asks about grades. Do you think Excalibur could be 10A? Or are you working on any projects that could be?
So Excalibur for sure is not a 10A. 10A is possible, but I don't think there is a project yet, or maybe there is a project, but I don't think I have tried something that could be a 10A, and I can't really imagine it yet. I think I can imagine 9C plus, but I can understand that 9C, 10A, that's really close, but it's a million miles away. And I'm sure right now, nobody is even close to be able to do 10A.
Right, okay.
Problem is, even if you project and dedicate your life to 10 years of your life to one project, you will not get any better. At certain point, if you work on for me, in my case, if I work on a route which is like not very complicated in terms of beta for 2 weeks, I'm basically like, I've learned it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a question, am I strong enough to do it right now, or am I like close or not?
Yeah. Okay.
If it's a different climber, maybe who's, let's say, more clumsy in their climbing, they can progress for many weeks. But then at a certain point, then the progression will stop, because there is nothing more that you can learn about the route. And you either can do it when all the mindset and conditions are there, or you can't. And it's simple. And I'm pretty sure right now, nobody can do 10A. 9C plus, that's closer.
What do you think needs to change in climbing and climbers to get someone to a 10A standard?
I think the level just has to go up.
So is that in strength? What's that in?
I think 20 years or maybe 30 years, it was believed that, nobody can do harder moves because the holes would have to be like so tiny. But I think actually the evolution of bouldering helped to increase the level of sport climbing so much, because you can actually do much harder moves.
Yeah.
And because sport climbing is climbed on a natural rock, and the routes should be natural, and that's why they are not homogeneous.
Yeah.
And it's really impossible to find a route which would be like 50 move, every single move would be equally hard. It's impossible. And that's why to be eventually all the hard routes has to have hard bouldery sequences.
Yeah, okay.
So the next hardest route could be 5 meter boulder prone, or it could be 80-meter route. I think you can still progress in so many different like styles of climbing that it's endless. I think in general, the climbing just has to reach a new level. But I think that it will come, all the youngsters now spending their time in the gym, and the quality of the gyms are much better, and the knowledge about the training is much better, and no doubt that it will happen.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be me.
Interesting. Scott asks, what was the most emotional moment for you as a climber?
Sending silence. Yeah.
Okay. What was so emotional about that? Or what made it emotional?
It was actually unexpected. It was a challenge. I liked the process and everything, but I never really expected that the reaching the anchor and clipping the anchor would be as emotional. Because it just mattered so much. And I was much more emotional than, I don't know, reaching the summit of El Cap on the top of the Dawn Wall.
Yeah, cool.
Which is maybe surprising that, the silence just ends in a random place in the middle of the cave. But that's the way it is.
I guess the process dictates how you feel at the end, right? So however it's different. Maritz asks, what are your plans for 2023?
So it's already a year of Olympic qualifiers. So I'm currently now training quite a lot, preparing myself for the competitions, not doing definitely the whole World Cup circuit. But I feel like as I get older, I definitely need to focus more on the training preparation and only pick up a few competitions. Maybe, for some people that wouldn't really work, because that would like put too much pressure onto just a few occasions when you have to actually perform. I feel like there's nothing that much more that I can learn from like just competing more. But I will definitely do some climbing trips. Definitely want to go back to Flatanger. And but as you know that I'm also a father, so all of these plans also correlate with staying as much as possible close to my family. So whenever, for example, last year, I think so far it's been working really well, as I had some exciting projects close to my home. Actually, quite a lot of my training I do right here at home, which is a great advantage. So I definitely still feel that I can spend the time with my family, actually more than, you know, a regular working father that goes to work from 9 to 5, which is great.
Nice.
Because I definitely feel already now feels like the time is running so fast, and it's really important to enjoy our son, because yeah, you feel like 1 week passes and he's changing all the time.
Nice. Yeah, that was a question actually. Someone asked about how you balance your family life, and I feel like you just answered it.
I think it's balancing the sport climbing project and competitions and training really well. But I feel like I'm not planning to do any like longer expeditions for the next 4 or 5 years. And I feel when the kids are older, it's easier to be away for longer time.
Yeah. What are you going to do differently in your preparation for the Olympics this time compared to last time? Like, what did you learn from last time that you'll do differently this time?
So there's no speed climbing, so that's pretty obvious. And it seems that the route setting style for lead climbing is different when it's a lead as a single discipline and combined format. The routes tend to be longer, more simple, less sketchy, less low percentage. Basically more open.
Okay, so it'll suit you better, right?
That's the main lesson that I've learned, that you have to train in a pretty different way for the lead in combined format.
Okay.
You just need to be, you just need to have much more endurance.
Nice. Someone asks about two people have asked about injury. Have you had to deal with an injury? And then like, how often do you get injured as you climb and train?
I think until I was 25, I wouldn't say I was even injured. You know, maybe a little bit of pain here and there. Didn't climb for a few days, max 1 week, and it was good. I think the last few years, the modern bouldering is taking a toll on me.
Right. Okay.
And that's why I'm definitely sure that it's Paris Olympics 2024, and then I'm not competing in bouldering anymore.
Right.
It's taking too much of my shoulders.
Right.
You know, all of these modern jumps might be relatively healthy only if your like body and posture is just perfect. And my shoulders naturally are not perfect. They are pretty hypermobile, which for very specific cases is great. But for like triple dynos with a final jump into a jack with one hand is the worst.
Yeah, I have hypermobility. A few people have asked about fear of falling. Have you ever struggled with fear of falling?
I think it's different because I just started climbing and leading when I was at such a young age. So I know I've been top roping until I was 7, and then I started leading, and for sure it was intimidating and I was scared, but maybe that was actually a good thing, because especially lead climbing in our home cracks where the routes are definitely not protected the same way as they are in the gym, it was scary and it was even potentially dangerous. Now, as I'm a father, I'm quite actually thinking, my parents were bold that they belayed me on this lead climb when I was 8.
Yeah.
Now thinking, if I let my son lead it at age of 8, I don't know.
Yeah.
While at the same time, I'm really grateful they did, because I learned so much.
Yeah, I
And
feel the same
maybe
way.
coming back to why I always wanted to climb, I don't know, in Indian Creek and Yosemite is also because I didn't come from this, you know, the gym climbing background or the pure climbing background. My parents were mountaineers, and we also have the sandstone climbing in Czech Republic, which is definitely run out. It's very different to sport climbing, and I think I learned to appreciate their, you know, being a bit scared.
Yeah,
And
totally.
overcoming it. And until now, I just enjoy being scared. It's just I feel that it's a shame that I never get scared while sport climbing.
Well, maybe you should come and do some of our trad routes in the UK.
That's the problem, that at the same time I don't want to expose myself to like high objective danger.
But they'll just be so easy for you that you'll just feel a little bit scared and then you'll be okay.
You know, last week looking at some of the grid routes, I was thinking like, no, it's not worth it.
Okay.
I kind of feel like, because as long as you're not too high off the ground, you don't like perceive the real danger, or it's like easy not to perceive the real danger.
But it's higher because you're close to the ground.
Like people often get scared, they're like 40 meters high up and like a couple of meters from the bolt, maybe even feeling that it's completely safe, but still being really scared. But they are often not scared at all while, you know, skipping a bolt in like low cave, 6 meters off the ground, where they could hit the ground with their back.
Yeah, or bouldering.
Which is like completely irrational, but that's usually the way it works.
Yeah, it's the human mind. Yeah. Okay, well, one last question maybe. Someone asks, does Adam find the conflict of competition versus supporting other climbers to do well in the competition? So I guess, you know, when you're in a competition, it's not like you're outdoors, right, where it's just you against the route, it's you against the other competitors. So there must be some part of you that actually wants them to do badly, but then also some part of you that actually wants everyone to do their best. How do you manage that?
It's easy as long as I climb last in the finals, because you don't have to watch them. You can go out first in the finals and then you watch the rest of the finalists, like hopefully they will fall lower. It's
right. Horrible. Yeah, okay.
But
if you go out last, you must have a sense though, like if people have topped things and stuff like that, right? Like in the bouldering, is that not hard to manage?
No, you can think about it in this way, you know, if they top it, I will top it too. It can't be that hard. In a way, if you go out last in the finals, that means that you were the best in semis.
Yeah.
And that means if it's a lead route, that means you only have to climb as good as the one who topped it out, because you have a better countback in semis.
I like this reasoning.
Me, if somebody tops the final route before me, it's actually, that's great.
Okay, I'm sure other people might interpret that as
it's not so hard. I only have to top it as well.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a lot of pressure to me.
Nothing changes, you know. If the previous climber doesn't top it but falls like at 2/3, you just don't know where exactly he fell.
Yeah.
But you still have to climb higher than him if you want to win.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, you mentioned before you like struggle to like empathize with people. Do you think of yourself as quite a logical person? Like you're very good at like being rational about things?
I hope so.
When are you least rational?
Not necessarily in climbing. Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely panic in certain situations, but you know, in climbing in general, I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I've done it so many times.
Yeah.
I can visualize myself being there, even if it's like a completely new style of climbing. Even though I was, I don't know, in the Indian Creek for the first time, I didn't feel I was out of my comfort zone, because it was still climbing.
Yeah. Okay.
Still doing stuff with my hands and feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Adam. That's been great. Yeah, really interesting answers, and yeah, hopefully the audience enjoyed it as well.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.